think there's a huge respect for the runners and the running community. I mean, for the longest time, runners are kind of those oddball guys and gals that are out there kind of doing their thing. But I think the respect is a big word that comes to mind. The respect from non-runners for runners that can do that kind of event in this kind of setting in these kind of conditions for this kind of reason. I think a general way to look at that is I think more people, especially in that area, more non-runners see runners as athletes and tough individuals. And I think that's obviously well justified, knowing runners as well as you and I both do.
Hello and welcome into episode 3 of Running for Coverage. We have a lot to get to today. We're hearing a lot from Mike Ryan, the former Jaguars trainer. He's done Ironman, he's done all kinds of runs, marathons, etc., and was recently up at the Boston Marathon working the medical tent at the finish line. Some really interesting stories from him and interesting experiences for what Mike experienced at the Boston Marathon. I think you're going to enjoy that. Mike will also give us some pointers on injury prevention. He is an author as well. He wrote the book on foam rolling for dummies, which most of us are when it comes to foam rolling until you get into it. So we're going to have some from Mike there as well. We're also going to look ahead to what's coming up on the schedule, including closing in on one of the final Grand Prix races of the spring. And we'll take a closer look at what happened at the state track meet here in Jacksonville with some local runners. But let's start with a look back at what happened in terms of the local race over the weekend. The Hope starts here 5K. There were 280 finishers. The race run in Springfield. 16-year-old Jonah Berry won at 16 minutes, 23 seconds. And he's from Largo, Florida. He is a high school runner who just 3 days earlier had finished 7th in the 3,200 meters at the state meet for Indian Rocks Christian School. So he stuck around, ran and won the 5K. So quite a week for that young man, Jonah Berry. Amanda Larson won the women's side, 21 minutes, 37 seconds there. Coming up this week, we have the Memorial Day 5K, Jacksonville Grand Prix race, the 40th annual Florida Striders Memorial Day 5K. That's in Orange Park. And it is a Monday race, Monday morning on Memorial Day. So it starts there at Town Hall Park. Last year, Matthew Stratton, at just the age of 18, edged Jonathan Holzabas and Jordan Garman, all three running 1540 or faster. That is a hot top three for sure. Crystal White won the women's at 1851. So that's always a big one, the Grand Prix race. There's just one more Grand Prix race after that. That's the run for the Pies. And then the season for the Grand Prix is over for the spring. Of course, no Grand Prix races again until the fall. So we do want to look ahead, though. There was a new run that has been added. I just learned about this. Some of you may already have known about it, but coming up about a month from now, June the 23rd, there is going to be a run over the SUP, the shared use path at the Fuller Warren Bridge. And this is sort of celebrating the opening of it. For those of you who have not had a chance to check it out, great way to see the city. It's about I'd say maybe a mile and a half across. I'd have to check exactly the distance. They're going to do a mile run, basically halfway there and back, and then the 5K will start and finish at RAM, the Riverside Arts Market. They'll run out on the pedestrian way to San Marco, and then come back. And there'll be post-race refreshments and everything else will be going on there under the Fuller Warren Bridge, where the Riverside Arts Market is each and every Saturday. Always a great place to go, by the way, for the weekend. So that's what we have going on coming up here. So I want to remind you to subscribe to our newsletter. If you follow me on Twitter at Cole Pepper, or check us out on Instagram at Running for Coverage, or if you just can't find it, you can email runningforcoverage@gmail.com, and I'll send you a link to sign up. Each and every month, we will be giving away some sort of prize from one of our sponsors. This month, the sponsor prize comes from a Server's Heart cleaning company. They clean our house, and talk about saving time and taking the burden off. They do a great job for us, and you can win a one house cleaning from them up to 2,500 square feet. If you live in a 6,000 square foot mansion, you probably can only clean a little bit of it, but a great chance for you to do that. So sign up. We'll also have more prizes as the summer continues, as well as great information there on what has gone on in our running community. So let's take time out here. When we come back, we hear from Mike Ryan, the former Jaguars trainer and a guy who is as fit as he can be, professionally and personally. That's coming up here on Running for Coverage. As we continue on here, always great to catch up with Mike Ryan, a guy I've known since I came to town in 1996, and somebody who has had such a big part in the Jacksonville sports scene as the head athletic trainer for the Jaguars for years. Also, some of you may know Ironman. He has done road races, half marathons. Have you done ultras, Mike?
I haven't done an ultra. I've been taunted to from friends. I haven't made that leap yet.
All right, so maybe in the future, but I'm also a great guy to hear from in terms of injury prevention and dealing with injuries. But I want to start out because Mike spent the Boston Marathon in a very interesting spot and perspective, and I thought this was a great way to bring him into the show to start here. Mike, give us, where were you on the day of the Boston Marathon this year?
I was about 40 yards past the finish line. I was invited by Chris Troyanis, who's the head medical consultant and director for the Boston Marathon. So he invited me out to be part of the finishing line, a medical tent and medical team. So I was right at the end of the finish, 40 yards past the finish, taking care of athletes when they finished and mending to their medical issues and medical needs. And it was a really cool perspective of seeing the race from that end, seeing the joys of people finishing, but obviously as a sports medicine specialist, helping people get healthy and get back to their family safely.
Well, let me start with the 30,000-foot view here. What did you see the most of? What was the most common thing you were doing to help these athletes who had just accomplished, probably for a lot of them, was a lifelong dream?
Absolutely. Well, the good news on that, before I answer that, is it was a little rainy. So the cool part, because we were really ready for the heat and hydration issues, because it can get hot. I've run the Boston Marathon as well, but on a colder day. So you can get really cold days or you can get hot days, and that kind of distance, either extreme is a problem. Most of what we dealt with is dehydration. A lot of people, a lot of blisters, a lot of people, their system kind of gets out of whack, and they have a really, Chris has a great orchestrated machine. Like, for instance, when people come in, instead of saying, oh, they're dehydrated, they have cramps, to give them hydration and to give them IVs, we would test their blood sugar. And literally within 3 minutes, we would know what their sodium levels were. So that is a really important level to make sure whether they need to be hydrated orally or whether they do need an IV. Because actually sometimes with long distances like that, people can take in too much fluid as far as water, and they get too diluted with their sodium, which is their salt. So that was just one example of finding the people that we thought needed to be hydrated, and literally 3 minutes, we knew the exact course of action to manage those injuries.
And obviously, we're not going to be naming names here or anything, but keeping people, if they're known, you may not have known most of their names as you're dealing with them. Maybe look down at the bib and see it. That's about it. But were there some extreme examples that you had to deal with this year?
I'll tell you, one of the extreme in an interesting kind of way, some guy walked in just covered with blood all over his hands, blood all over his shirt. And it was kind of a horrifying scene when he came in. So we grabbed him, pulled him off the side. He had a big smile on his face, which kind of gave us some comfort. But what had happened is he had dribbled a basketball in the rain for 26 miles, and his hands were just like raw hamburger. And he had blood all over him. The basketball was shredded. And he raised $10,000 for charity. And I said, well, did you toughen up your hands ahead of time? And he said, no, he's a computer programmer. He said, my dad grabs my hands all the time. And he says, your hands are so soft. You haven't done a real day of labor in your life. So he raised a lot of money, but I said, you won't be tickling the keyboard for a couple of weeks, because literally we spent half an hour literally bandaging up his fingers because of the blood, and the basketball looked like it'd been through hell as well.
Well, I can kind of, not even knowing, I can kind of picture his dad in my mind, giving him that kind of advice. You also had a chance to meet some really interesting figures there on the Boston Marathon, and I hear from so many, and I've not been to the marathon. I hope to go here soon, but there's sort of a community of Boston Marathon celebrities in some regard who come out every year, and you got to meet some of them.
I did. It was amazing. Spending time with Bill Rogers was a great walk down memory lane, and we chatted because I was running the Gate River Run one year, and some guy pulled up beside me, literally halfway as we turned by the park, and he had that crazy arm going, and he was pushing the pace, and he was much older than I was, and the crowd loved him, and I finally looked over and realized it's Bill Rogers. So I saw Bill up there. We had a great chat and talked about the River Run, which he loves Jacksonville, loves this race. Um, yeah, just a lot of people that were involved with it. A lot of the original woman that ran legally, Bobby, she was up there. Just they did a great job of both as a 10-year anniversary of the Boston Marathon bombing. They did a lot of great tributes to those individuals that were impacted by that horrible event. But then a lot of people that had won the race, who were somehow involved with the race, with the history of the race, came back, and they were very gracious with their time, spending time with all the runners and just kind of telling stories. It was a real storytelling moment, and runners from all over the world. I met the oldest runner that was running the marathon. I think he was 86 years old, and got some good tidbits from him, like, hey, how can I keep running and stay healthy? And so it was just a great. I came away from that race very, very inspired as a runner, and the running community has never been closer and has never been more bonded. And that's just fellowship of just, we run because we love to be active. We love to live a healthy lifestyle. And really, that's kind of the mecca of that lifestyle.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, you talk about sporting events. Each sport seems to have that one event where it becomes kind of a convention. In college basketball, it's the Final Four. In the NFL, it's the Super Bowl. In the NBA, it's probably the All-Star game. Where yes, there's an event of competition going on, but it also becomes sort of the central meeting point, sort of the mecca for that sport. And the Boston Marathon is certainly that. Certainly in the United States, maybe in the world, as far as that's concerned. And you talk about an
Absolutely.
86-year-old running the Boston Marathon. I mean, you can find 86-year-olds from time to time running marathons. But you have to qualify for Boston, so
Yes.
he's still moving. That what a remarkable uh, accomplishment for somebody of any age. But when you talk about 86 and still running it, that's amazing.
It really is. And I think that's a good example of people that are just there to do it and to be active. And one of the things I said to him, I said, what's the trick? And how'd you do this? He said, well, I think the first 7 marathons he ran barefoot. He says, but then he realized that was stupid. So I put shoes on now. Yeah.
Good step.
So at any age, we can get smarter. So Cole, you and I, we still have some hope.
Step one, put shoes on. That's
Here, here.
that's pretty good for a lot of racing. While you're up there, give me sort of a sense of what was going on with the 10-year anniversary. That made such an impact on the running world writ large, but also specifically for those who were close to the Boston Marathon.
Absolutely. I try to not get emotional about it because I was born just outside of Boston in Framingham, where the race goes through, is where I was born. So that area is very, very fond to me anyways. But I think the overall premise of it is people felt very violated, very hurt for the people that were touched by that bombing. And it just brought the community a lot closer. That Boston strong element, you see those signs and those shirts everywhere. So it wasn't just a fad for that 6 months after the bombing. 10 years later, it's very strong. One thing they did, I went to a lot of the memorials and the tributes to that. And one of them is like about 40 yards before the finish line. And they brought a lot of the people in and the family of some of the victims. And one of the young boys, 8-year-old boy who was killed during that episode, his brother, who was 11 at the time, was right beside him. He lost an eye, and the whole family was gravely injured by this whole thing, along with the loss of the young 8-year-old son. And they've rallied around that, and they've created a foundation for him. And I saw some tributes to them on the news a couple of days before. Well, the finish line medical tent that I was working was right there. I just passed the finish line. So at one point, I just kind of walked out. We go out and kind of grab people and see who needed help and bring them in. And I walked out, and I just happened to walk out when the brother and some of his family members just finished. So they just gone by the memorial tribute to their brother, their lost brother. They finish it and they come to me, and the family members right next to me. And it was a really emotional moment of finishing what they've done. As you can only imagine, the mix of emotions from finishing such an epic event and then the tribute to the brother. And it was just, I felt like I was just kind of sitting there right next to an amazing tribute that really, really got emotional.
Well, I'm sure there were a lot of moments like that for a lot of people
That there
throughout the
were.
course of the week. I wonder how the marathon feel, or the feeling of security has changed since 10 years ago. You mentioned you've been up there for a lot of these.
Yep.
What was your sense of how it's changed in terms of the way people are interacting with that?
Well, I got a great opportunity to go into the command center right by the finish line, and it was like something I've never seen. And I've worked a lot of Super Bowls for both NBC, and I was with the Super Bowl with the New York Giants. So I've seen a lot of it, how that goes. And I went in there and they had this huge room and they had cameras everywhere. They're all synchronized. They even had the medical components. They had medical tents along the way. Because again, this is an event over 26 miles. So the dynamics of controlling all that from both medical and security is huge. But they had officers everywhere. They had cameras everywhere. Everyone was synchronized, even to the point where if someone fell at 16 and a half miles and someone called 911 and the ambulance came, that ambulance service would link into the communication system for the Boston Marathon. So if your brother is running the race, you could call into a number and they say, oh, by the way, he's at Framingham Memorial Hospital. So everything around there was synchronized with that, both the emergency and the police. So the security was really, really high. And everybody really had their head on a swivel. You're walking around the certain kind of bags you could carry, what everybody was looking. So everybody was looking out for each other, and that the bonding of both the spectators, the runners, and the police and emergency medical services were all one. Again, the city really comes together that in a strong, strong way.
Has that changed the way that non-runners, fans, are interacting with the race? Because I know it's very much a social event as well
Yes.
for folks along the race course. Has that changed that at all?
I think it has. I think meeting a lot of people, and we just spent a lot of time. I went to some charity events when I was up there, so I got to mingle with a lot of runners and non-runners alike. I think there's a huge respect for the runners and the running community. I mean, for the longest time, runners are kind of those oddball guys and gals that are out there kind of doing their thing. But I think the respect is a big word that comes to mind. The respect from non-runners for runners that can do that kind of event in this kind of setting and these kind of conditions for this kind of reason. I think a general way to look at that is I think more people, especially in that area, more non-runners see runners as athletes and tough individuals. And I think that's obviously well justified, knowing runners as well as you and I both do. I think that's well justified and well earned. And I think this whole Boston Marathon persona has really been at the forefront of creating that push of runners are athletes. They earned a lot of respect, and it makes more people want to jump on board.
Well, I'll tell you, it didn't take something like what happened 10 years ago for me to be impressed by marathoners. There's no doubt about that. You finish a marathon, you're tough.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter how fast or slow you're going. That's a long way to go. You recently did a Spartan race.
I did.
You've done a few of those through the years. What's that experience like?
I love it. It's a Spartan race is like an off-road obstacle course race. Anywhere from 20 to 35 different obstacles. And if you can't complete an obstacle, there'd be a heavy carry or a spear throw or a bucket carry or rope climb. You have to do 30 burpees before you move on to the next event. So I've kind of got into that. I got a little bit out of triathlon because I like the off-road. I like the total body kind of workouts. This was a fun one because it was in Tampa, but unlike an off-road obstacle course race through the mud and woods, so to speak, for most Spartan races, this was in the Buccaneer Stadium. So it was really cool. You're running up and down the bleachers. You go into the Buccaneers locker room. You're doing a lot of stuff in the field. You're crawling up the ramp. So they make it kind of epic in a really cool setting. With the big Buccaneers pirate ship up at the end zone, and it was really cool. A lot of fun, and again, like runners, it's a great community of a lot of tough people. But when the race is over, everybody has a lot of fun.
It's interesting. I'm thinking about somebody who has not spent a lot of time in an NFL stadium, other than in the stands and the concession stand, maybe. That must be quite an experience. But here you are. You spent a good part of your adult life in the behind-the-scenes areas, the places where not everybody can go in an NFL stadium. So how did that impact your experience of experiencing an NFL stadium in this way?
It was neat because you're seeing a different side of it. I did a Spartan race in Fenway Park a bunch of years ago. And that was very distracting because growing up as a Red Sox fan, you're running down these hallways and they have all these great pictures of memories and events. And they had like the Fisk pole down on top of the Green Monster that he bounced that home run off. It was at the 75 World Series. So it was almost distracting because you're looking around trying to take in the memorabilia, but you got to kick yourself in the ass to keep running fast. So it just puts you in a really cool setting. And this was another way to do it, to go into the Buccaneers locker room and I heard a lot of people run and say, which one was Brady's locker? Look at where Tom Brady used to be. And it's fun because you see a different side of the stadium, but you're having fun in that kind of setting. And it takes a great venue and puts a really cool event in it with a lot of cool people. So it was a lot of fun.
Well, Mike also is an author and has written. We'll show the book here, which is probably, I think, of all of the sort of instructional books you can find, this one probably applies to more people of my age and older than I can imagine, which is all about foam rolling. And it's something that I didn't really encounter until maybe 10 years ago. But what a difference the foam roller can make. And this has become one of the go-to pieces of equipment for not only recovery, but also for training and prep.
Absolutely. A nice lead in for that, Cole. Thank you. Yeah, foam rolling for dummies. During the pandemic, I'm not one to sit around. I had to shut down my physical therapy clinic for about 8 months. So during that time, I've always been a huge fan of rollers. I've used it for myself. I've used it with my patients. I use it with NFL players who I work with for 26 years. And I took a lot of protocols and techniques and all the little nuances of how to get a lot of work done with a roller very quickly, and literally in less than 10 minutes. Is huge. So yeah, I'm a big fan. I always say, and this is a great setting for it, is if you're a runner, you have to be a roller. And it makes a world of difference. And I always tell people, if you're not really sure, because a lot of times I say to people, do you roll? And they go, yeah, which means they kind of dabble with it, but they don't really have a game plan. I give you a simple game plan to do this, do this. You can roll your quads and your IT bands in less than 5 minutes. You get both legs done in less than 10 minutes. I always tell people, if you don't think it really works, do these techniques on just one leg, your tightest leg. And I guarantee you within 2 days, you're going to realize that leg feels 10 years younger than the leg you didn't roll. So just a simple way for very little money, you can keep and prevent injuries and keep running, spend less time in physical therapy clinics.
We're going to put a link to purchase that in our newsletter. So if folks want to find that, be sure to subscribe to the newsletter, and we'll give a link to purchase foam rolling for dummies, which, again, I'm definitely qualified as the dummy part, but the foam rolling does make a difference. There's no doubt about it. Mike, thanks so much. We're going to hear from you coming up here in just a bit on some coaching tips, but always great to hear from you and love to get your perspective and what an experience for you here at the Boston Marathon.
Thank you, Cole. I enjoy his time with you. Thank you.
All right, our gear review each and every week, we usually change it up a little bit, but because we had Mike on and he's got all three things covered, the experiences as a runner, the feeling in terms of what he knows about recovery and injury prevention. We'll get to that in a minute, but also want to give Mike a chance to give us his gear review of the thing he never runs without.
I will not run without calf sleeves. I've pulled my calf so many times. Before my last Ironman, I strained my calf 3 times. So I bet I haven't run 5 times in the last 5 years without calf sleeves. So as we get older, we all know people that have strained calves, and calves for a runner are really slow to heal. So for me, calf sleeves that breathe really well, give my calves good support, is usually the second thing I put on before I get ready for a run. And for me, it keeps me happy, it keeps my calves happy, and it keeps me running. So calf sleeves are my don't run without tool that I use.
Is there a brand or a type or a feature on them that you particularly look for?
I use CEP, and I have no connection with the company, but I like them because they're made for runners. They're not overly compressive. They breathe really well. Some of the calf sleeves are like I would use for the NFL players are really tight and really strong, don't breathe very well. So I like the running oriented CEP calf sleeves. Again, they come in all kinds of colors. They breathe really well. They're really comfortable, and they last forever. So that's my my go-to company when I use for sleeves.
All right, more from Mike in just a moment. This is a Mike heavy podcast this time around. We do want to talk about the state track and field meet that was held at UNF's Hodges Stadium last week and into the weekend. But what a great performance by so many of our local runners. And I'll run through them here. I hope I don't miss anybody, but Sky Dixon at Providence won both the 100 and 200 meter state championships. Kayla Cleveland at University Christian won the 100-meter hurdles. Tyrone Summerall from Trinity won the boys 400 hurdles. Jillian Candelino at Bowles won the girls 3,200-meter state championship. Jackson Sprint Team won the 4x400 boys state championship. Bishop Kenny's girls won the 4x4 state championship. Vivian Stovall at Bowles won the girls pole vault. In fact, Bowles went 1, 2, 3 there. Presley Wolf at Bowles won the girls triple jump. Z Curtis at Bowles won the girls javelin. Nathan Leibowitz won the boys shot put from Ponte Vedra. Vincent Jackson, boys javelin winner from Ponte Vedra. Isabella Matafari from Ponte Vedra won the girls javelin, and Ponte Vedra won the state championship in 4A. So hats off to the boys Ponte Vedra track and field team. Christian Miller, the sprinter from Creekside, won the boys 200. Matrasha Reed of Ed White won the girls 200 wheelchair, girls 800 wheelchair, the girls shot put wheelchair as well. So 3 state championships for Matrasha Reed. Congratulations to her. Allison Johnson of Creekside won the girls 1600 and 3200. Matt Ryan, no, not the quarterback, the Nice runner from the distance runner won the boys 3,200 meters. Mandarin's boys won the 4x800. Sophia Killen of Creekside, the girls high jump champion. She's just a freshman. And Madison Linscomb of Oakleaf won the girls javelin. So congratulations to all of the state champions. And we have a full link to the results of the state high school championships in our newsletter. So be sure to sign up there. Let's now turn to Mike Ryan and his tip for injury prevention, which often is overlooked.
For prevention, the 3 tips I would give you a call for the runners to prevent injuries is, number 1, to be a roller. If you're a runner, you have to be a roller. Get on the soft rollers, get on the foam rollers, use the rolling balls to help manage those injuries, because as muscles get tight from workouts, you want to relax those muscles, increase joint range of motion. So first tip, get on a roller, be a roller. The second thing I would say is get on soft surfaces. As we get older, we start pounding into the sidewalk, we start pounding into the roads. Yeah, we run in great shoes, but it doesn't offset the pounding that your joints take from it. So what I always tell people is I like to do at least 50% of my mileage on soft surfaces, on sand, grass, or dirt. So seek out the places you can do this. And you know where there's a great place on those sidewalks is right beside the sidewalks. There's usually a strip of grass. So get off the hard surfaces, get on the soft surfaces. And if you can get 50% of the time on soft surfaces, your joints are going to thank you for years down the road. And the third thing I would say as far as with injury prevention is to know your pace, to look where you have to do. Like I talk to and I work with a lot of runners, and runners, I say, okay, what's your pace for this upcoming 5K? Well, maybe they want to do an 8-minute mile. Well, if that's your goal for your race pace, don't be doing your intervals and your pickups at 6 minutes a mile. That's way too fast. So progress with that pace, know where your pace is. I always say, if you're doing intervals and speed work, it should be no more than 15% faster than race pace. Ideally closer to 10%. So that's just a little bit faster, but it's not a lot faster. So people start going really high intensity workouts for their pace work, for their interval training. They tend to lead themselves into a point where they can start having issues with tendons and with muscles. So keep that pace in check is the third tip I would say for runners to prevent injuries.
All right, Mike, thanks so much. And thank you for joining us here on the Running for Coverage podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, on Spotify, on Amazon. At some point, it will pop in on Apple. We're still waiting for that to get confirmed. But we'll also make sure to push that out when it does happen. Follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Running for Coverage. And if you want to just hit me on Twitter at Cole Pepper, we have some things brewing there as well. And a reminder that sign up for the newsletter if you haven't already, because that's your place to stay connected. We're going to have some deals and some ways for you to win prizes as well each and every month. That'll do it for episode 3 of the Running for Coverage podcast. Thanks so much for being with us here this week. Thanks so much to Darren Ronan from the Ronan School of Music, who composed our original music for this podcast. If you want music lessons for you or a child, check out the Ronan School of Music. And Darren always does a great job performing out in the community and at events. Check him out at his social media. Thanks to Darren Ronan and the Ronan School of Music.